Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're gonna be reviewing Tago Mago by the band Can.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
So when it comes to the favorite bits from this album, there are none of them actually, so we should get right into this review. So this is, as I said, Tago Mago. Now this is the second studio album by the krautrock band of Can. Now the lineup on here is made by several people. Firstly we have Irmin Schmidt on the keyboards, Jackie Liebezeit on the drums and the double bass, Michael Caroli on guitar and violin, the co-founder Holger Tsukai on the bass, and the newly recruited Japanese member called Damo Suzuki on the vocals. Now, this album also saw the departure of the original lead vocalist for Can, who was on their debut album of Monster Movie called Malcolm Mooney. That's a funny name, isn't it? Now, if you were to take the subgenre of krautrock, which is already experimental, and actually look at the far edges of it, like the extremes, this is definitely one of the extremes when it comes to being experimental. And this album does not opt to use very structured and hard-hitting riffs. It actually goes ahead and just puts on these really large and stretched out soundscapes with a lot of environmental sounds, which they're all basically very psychedelic in nature, and this is the overall theme of this album, being very, very psychedelic. And this album is an odd one because it's really on the fence for most people. I've read reviews online, and this album really garners two types of reviews. The people that think that this album is a masterpiece, like a magnum opus, so good, so fantastic, nothing tops this. And then there's the people who think this is, absolute garbage. They don't like it, they don't connect to it, they don't realize why people like it so much. And to me personally, I'm kind of more to the liking side of this one. I don't know why. I cannot explain to you. I'm gonna try, but I cannot explain to you why I like this album, because it truly is a really odd specimen. I can only assume that one of the reasons that I do like this album, although I am a person that usually connects to, fast, shape-shifting types of music, I can assume that this album sort of creates this, not intrusive and very distancing feel from the listener. So you cannot really, this album doesn't try and, how should I say it? This album doesn't do its hardest to try and get to you. It just lingers there and waits for you to come towards it, and that's the entire mood and psychedelia this album has. If you're in the right mindset for it, you can immerse yourself in this album, but if you're not, you just wouldn't get it at all. And I think the name of the game here, honestly, is minimalism. This album does not splendor in its grandiose, and it goes ahead and it just features itself in the most subtle of ways. And I saw several people comparing this album to the works of Amandol II. Now, I personally only listen to Wolf City on here, and I know they have a lot more things going for them. But honestly, by this listen, I do not think that there's a lot of connection between the two. Something fundamentally in the core of the music might sound the same, but at the same time, it's really different. While Amandol's experimentation really tries and take a very hard-hitting approach and trying different things and always be ever-shifting, this album is none of that. It's really long, it's really stretched, as I already said, and it takes one motive and just puts it on such a long time span that it's amazing it can even last as one song. And the songs on here, they're not short. Some of them are really long, and you know what? It's kind of amazing that this album holds in the time, because honestly, it's really hard to create this type of music and make it stick with most people. And most people that don't like this album noted that if they had to choose a favorite song, they would go with the last track of Bring Me Coffee or Tea. And I can understand why, because it's the most accessible track on here. None of the tracks on here are really that accessible, but if you'd have to choose one, it would be that one. But to me personally, it was my least favorite track. It was annoying, I didn't like it, it didn't feel connected to anything that we've listened to so far. And personally, I think that the way you end off an album is a way that you respect what you've done so far to get to this point, and this track just doesn't do that, and it's my least favorite track. But when it comes to my favorite track on here, I had a slight dilemma between two tracks and I wanted to go with Ogman, I think that's the name, but I went with the track Packing O because it was shorter and a bit easier to digest and still experimental and funky in many different ways, and I liked it quite a bit. But like most of this album, this is not a fantastic album. I wasn't like really, thrilled to listen to it and waiting for what's to come next. I was like, okay, yeah, this is cool, I'm having a good time, I'm totally not suffering this, but it's not a fantastic album in any way, and this track specifically is a fine track. So when it comes to the cover of this album, this one is actually quite cool. Like, they really found this very imaginative psychedelic way of featuring what I believe to be a person and the brains, the insides of the person, and I think it's really cool, and I don't even know how they achieved this type of, visual representation. I don't know which medium they used, but whatever they did, I think it's really all that unique. And I don't really know if I would say that the imagery on this cover really connects with the music, but I do believe there's some sort of connection. And yes, I know the text is very obtrusive, and in my honest opinion, I think that they should have just left the text away, put it on like the back or something, and kept the cover simple as it is. But back when this cover came out, putting just an image without any, symbolizing form of the band's name or the album name was not that popular, and I totally understand why, and still this cover remains a pretty unique specimen in this really unique form of art representation. So when it comes to the rating of this album, as I said, it's not great, but it's pretty good, and I was doubting whether I should give it a 6 or a 7, but I decided I'm gonna go with a 6 out of 10, but I can only assume that if you're high enough, this album would be at least a 7. So that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're gonna be listening to an album called Alienism by the band Infringement. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.